Komið sæl og velkomin í þáttinn á ferð og flugi. Við erum staddar hérna ég og Guðný og ætlum að halda áfram að fjalla Ísland sem alveg milljón og ferðamálaþingið sem var haldið á Selfossi á vegum ferðamálastofu og við ætlum að svona fara aðeins í gegnum það, Guðný.
Já.
Og hérna við tókum 2 viðtöl.
Já, var ekki annað en áspyrnanda á Selfossi hótelstjóran.
Já, sem var mjög...
Alveg æðislega orðið flott þarna á hótel Selfossi.
Já, stórt og mikið og góð umsvif hjá þeim.
Og stutt að fara náttúrulega, það að fyllast kannski öll hótelin í Reykjavík.
Já.
Stutt að fara til hans.
Já. Og síðan vorum við með viðtal við Breta, Erik Holding, sem kom hingað og var svona minn okkur á við þyrftum að fara að
Já, hann kom bara með rosalega góðan punkt með þetta að gera ykkur grein fyrir því á Íslandi að þið eru 300.000. Ef þið fáið milljón ferðamenn.
Já, jafnvel sko 6, hvernig verðum við þá? 6 milljónir?
Já, en hann var nú að tala þú veist þetta, mér fannst það interessant, hann var að tala sko að þá erum við með 400 sinnum stærri ferðamenn eru 400% stærri heldur en bara íbúar landsins.
Já.
Og á sumrin, á peak season myndi þá, sem allir vilja vera í sumarfrí og allir vilja bara fara eitthvert, þá bara helmingurinn af þjóðinni útlendingar.
Við þurfum kannski að flytja inn útlendingar til þess að vinna. Já. Allir Íslendingarnir á Kanarí eða á Spáni.
Já, nei, en það má hugsa þetta náttúrulega allt saman.
Já.
Því við erum náttúrulega lítil þjóð.
Já.
Að gera stóra hluti.
Og svo var náttúrulega yfirskriftin á þessu hjá var skipulag, fyrirhyggja og framtíðarsýn í íslenskri þjónustu sem við erum verið að fjalla þetta skiptir miklu máli að hugsa til framtíðar.
Og svo náttúrulega líka frábært með eins og við vorum með Hönnun Birnu í síðasta þætti.
Hún kláraði bara innanlandsflugi bara nokkrum dögum seinna.
Sæll, hvernig finnst ykkur það?
Mjög snögg að þessu. En við ætlum sem sagt að byrja á sína viðtali við Ásbjörn, hótelstjóra á hótel Selfossi. Fyrir auglýsingar og eftir auglýsingar þá sýnum við viðtalið við hann Erik og við byggjum fólk að fara ekki af skjánum.
Nei, og bara njóta þess og horfa á þetta er bara athyglisvert mjög.
Sæll Ásbjörn.
Góðan sæll.
Hótelstjóra á hótel Selfossi.
Já.
Segðu okkur aðeins af hótelinu hérna.
Já, við erum með glæsilegt hótel eins og þú sérð.
Já.
Við erum með 99 herbergi á hótelinu og erum náttúrulega með frábæra ráðstefnuaðstöðu og þennan glæsilega matsal sem við sitjum hérna í og barinn. Já. Svo erum við með yndislegt spa, þannig að þetta er svona fullkominn staður til þess að stökkva úr bænum eina helgi og slaka á. Eða bara halda stóra fundi eins og við vorum hérna í dag. Já. 350 manna ráðstefna og...
Ferðamálastofa hélt fundi sín hér, 350. Ég er búin að tala við nokkra hérna sem voru hér í dag. Alveg dásama framkvæmdan hjá okkur.
Takk fyrir það.
Allt tipptopp, bara eins og bestu hótelum út í einu stóra heimi sem við köllum þegar við erum að ferðast. Ég ætla nú líka svona forvitna að sjá hjá þér eftir að hafa hlustað á erindin hérna í dag. Hvernig sér þú þetta, Ásbjörn?
Dagurinn er búin að vera mjög áhugaverður. Það er margt skemmtilegt búið að koma fram og einmitt þessi tengsl á skipulagsmálum og ferðaþjónustu eru svo augljós. Og að mörgu leyti eru skipulagsmálin hafa verið hamlandi fyrir framþróun í ferðaþjónustu og nú þurfum við bara að taka höndum saman og vinna málið áfram.
Viltu meina að við höfum sofað á verðinu þar eins og margir?
Við höfum kannski ekki beint sofa verðinum heldur hafa kannski svona ytri aðstæði verið þannig út af því að skipulagsmálin er náttúrulega höndum sveitarfélaga, þetta er ekki eitt af endilega forgangsmálin hjá sveitarfélagunum sem að verður til þess að þau einbeita sér að grunnþjónustunni og auðvitað snýst fjármagn og fjárfestingu í uppbyggingunni og þannig að sveitarfélagin hafa kannski bara ekki bolmagn til þess að vera með okkur í þessu. Þannig að við þurfum bara að finna leiðina og stefna fram á veginn og byrja að hanna og skipuleggja og gera hlutina vel.
Nú ert þú með þokkalega stórt hótel hérna á þínu svæði.
Já.
Er þitt sveitarfélag að vakna að taka meira þátt í?
Tvímælalaust. Og sveitarfélag hér hefur það skilur í raun og veru þessi samlegð sem að hótelið og bara í raun og veru þessi atvinnusköpun sem er í kringum hótelið og í raun og veru öll þjónustufyrirtækin á Selfossi njóta góðs af hótelinu. Við erum hérna með 40.000 gesti á ári sem eru að skila sér hérna inn í samfélagi sem að skiptir náttúrulega gríðarlega miklu máli fyrir alla þjónustu á svæðinu. Þannig að það klárlega mikils virði fyrir sveitarfélög og sveitarfélög algjörlega búið að kveikja því. Já. Þannig að þeir eru svona hægt og sígandi að reyna að byggja upp og búið að vera mjög mikil vakningi að skilta upp bæinn og svona búa til smá svona einfalda en fína svona afþreyingu fyrir gestina sem gista hér og náttúrulega þetta aukin gæði fyrir okkur heimamenn líka.
Já, af því að þetta fer yfirleitt saman nefnilega.
Klárlega. Já. Og það einmitt svona kannski skilaböðin út úr deginum í dag. Já. Það það að maður á að byggja upp fyrir ferðamenn en auðvitað eiga íbúar þessa lands að njóta líka. Og ef það fer ekki saman, þá á maður ekki að byggja upp. Nei. Ef það er ekki líka fyrir íbúana, þá ertu á röngum stað. Já. Því við fyrir náttúrulega ekki að breyta okkur. Nei. Það er mjög ólíklegt allavega ég og þú. Já, við erum ekki að fara í það. Nei, við erum ekki. Ásveit, takk kærlega fyrir. Virkilega gaman að fá að vera hérna hjá þér á hótelinu og gangi vel í vetur og ná í fullt af erlendu ferðamannum. Klárlega. Takk.
Þú ert að horfa á INN, Íslands nýjasta nýtt.
Bókaðu flugið á ernir.is. 5 áfangastaðir allt land. Flugfélagið Ernir.
Hótel Grímsborgir, opið daglega allt árið. Sími 555 78 78.
Árshátíðir, fundur og viðburður í veitingastaðnum Lava í Bláa lóninu, bluelagoon.is. Eva Laugavegi, haustvörurnar 2013 eru komnar, Eva Laugavegi 26. Happy hour og mýmisbar alla daga milli klukkan 4 og 6, hotelsaga.is.
Traust öryggislið og hentugar girðingarlausnir, fjölmargir möguleikar, aðgangsstýringar, klifurvarnir og fleira. Innova.is.
Mundu að vera í áskrift. Þú finnur þínar eftirlætistölur á lotto.is. Meistaramánuður. Áfram Vogur. Vertu með í símasöfnun SÁA til styrktar sjúkrahúsinu Vogi. Vogur hefur snert hverja einustu fjölskyldu í landinu og leitar nú þinnar aðstoðar til að geta haldið áfram að hjálpa fólki. Hringdu núna í síma 903 1001 fyrir 1000 króna styrk, 903 1003 fyrir 3000 króna styrk eða 903 1005 fyrir 5000 króna styrk. SÁA.
Prófaðu þyrluflug með Norðurflugi. Þyrluflug er ódýrara en þig grunar og hrein skemmtun. Þyrluflug er spennandi valkostur fyrir innlenda jafnt sem erlenda gesti. Kíktu á vef Norðurflugs helikopter.is eða hafðu samband í síma 562 2500 og látt okkur koma þér á óvart hversu þyrla er ódýr valkostur.
Er bunan orðin kraftlítil? Þarft þú að pissa oft á nóttunni? Próstaminus er öflugt náttúrulegt efni fyrir karlmenn.
Sama vöruverð í öllum verslunum Bónus. Okkar framlag í 24 ár.
Þú ert að horfa á INN, Íslands nýjasta nýtt.
Hello Eric, welcome to Iceland.
Thank you for your welcome.
We are here, you had a speech on the tourist board today, where was a lot of people who came from the industry to listen to you.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you were telling us to look at?
Yeah, sure. I think that it's a really important time now for Iceland. You're getting about 700,000 people coming to Iceland a year, and now people are talking about expanding that. And some of the figures that are coming out are 1.2 million, 1.5 million, maybe within 10 years, something like that. And although that's quite low, if you look at somewhere like England, where I'm from,
it's a small figure.
50 million.
Yeah.
But the issue with Iceland is a couple of things. One is the environment here is very fragile, very delicate, needs to be treated with respect and great care. And also, the thing that interests me is what happens when you divide the number of tourists in a country by the number of people in that country. So once you begin to, you begin to look at that, you look at somewhere like Britain, where maybe about 50% of the people that live in Britain, that's the tourist number per year. So about 25 million people, that's about 50%. Somewhere like France, it's maybe about 120%. They have about 80 million people come. There's about 65 million people or something live in France. In Iceland, you're talking about 1.5 million people coming to a country with 350, 400,000 people. You're talking about 400%. You're talking about four times the amount of people as actually live here. And the questions that I've been posing today is, I don't know what that means. But I don't think anybody knows what that means for the country as a whole.
Yeah, but we have countries like we talk about Malta. They are what 400,000 or 500,000 people. The tourists coming to that country is 1.5 million.
Yeah,
right?
to which country?
Malta.
To somewhere like Malta.
Yeah. So
well, it's worth looking at what that means. But the question I was asking was. It could mean that in the summer peak, when you have your best weather and you all want to be on vacation, that 60 or 70% of the people in the country could be overseas visitors. And I wonder what that would feel like. And I think that it's just worth people, before things start happening, to be thinking about what are the limits that we want to place on these things, because you can control tourism, you really can. And the kinds of people that are coming to Iceland they're not really tourists, they're adventurers, they're travellers, they're visitors, they're people that understand culture, and they're coming to Iceland for what it means to them. So you're getting a very particular kind of visitor, and I think because of that, you don't need to provide them with the kinds of environments that are affecting other cities. So this afternoon I gave an example of Stonehenge in Britain, which has taken 30 years now. They're just about to open a new visitors centre. They've moved it from Stonehenge to 1.5 miles away. It's right by the stones at the moment. They have no setting, nobody understands the history, there's poor facilities, and there's been an idea about moving things away so that people have to come to an interpretation centre, they have to take the time and make the effort to then walk to the stones, which is about 2.5–3 kilometres away, or they take a land train, but it all takes time, and there's more time to appreciate what people are actually doing, and then I think that people have more of an emotional response with things. So in terms of the natural environment, I think that there are lots of lessons to be learned from other places that made big mistakes. And as you begin to kind of move forward with the tourism industry here, is to have the goal of not just about this is increased revenue, this is increased employment, but actually to be thinking about we could be the leaders in sustainable tourism. It could be the reason people come to Iceland, because those kinds of people want those kinds of experiences. So that's in the natural environment, and what we could do with that. Iceland could be world leaders in this kind of tourism. And it's possible to achieve. You have the people in the country that are smart enough to be able to achieve that. You have the environments like nobody else has. So that can all be achieved.
And we have all the tools to do it. There's no investment.
But I mean, in terms of investment, make the tourists pay. You know, I travel abroad. I went to Boston. When I looked at my hotel bill in Boston, it had a tax on the bottom. I paid for the big dig. You know, they removed all of their transport infrastructure, which was blighting the city. The tourists paid for it.
Of course.
And a lot of people were grumbling about it. But as a tourist, I looked at that and I just think, well, good for you. You know, I'm coming to your country, I'm a guest in your country. If you want to tax me to make things better, that's fine by me. And I don't think people should be afraid of that. I think they think that will put people off, but it's going to be a small percentage. If you put it on hotel rooms, it will not make very much difference, but it could make a huge difference to the projects that you're able to do in the country. So I really wouldn't be afraid of that. It wouldn't put me off coming. And then the second thing I was really talking to people about was about what's more difficult is when you're dealing with tourism within cities, because I think it's fairly easy when you're in a natural environment or a heritage environment, and you've got something like Thingvellir, which is both a natural environment and a historic environment. It's fairly straightforward to do sustainable tourism because everyone can see it's a good thing. They can all see it's a good idea if we have great interpretation centres, if we take care of the natural environment, if we have very green buildings or things. Everyone can see that's a good idea. It still takes a long time for things to happen and a lot of money, but everyone can see it's a good idea. When you're in a city, it's very different for sustainable tourism, and I gave examples. I asked people in my office in London 3 questions. I said, what are the places in London you would never go to as a Londoner?
In your office?
In my office. They're all people that live in London. I said, what are the places in London you would never go to because they're tourist environments as far as you're concerned? Which places would you go to because you consider them to be real London? And if you had a friend from abroad you really wanted to show something to, where would you take them? And then the last one was, which places do you think are on the edge between those 2 things? I had 15 separate responses back in 10 minutes. They all said the same thing. They all said exactly the same thing. People named Leicester Square, Oxford Street. People in my office, they never go there. It's a tourist place. It's a tourist place. It doesn't represent London. It's not a nice environment. There's nothing on offer there. So there's nothing on offer there for Londoners. They won't go there.
We Icelanders are there, you know that, quite a lot, on Oxford Street.
So
we go shopping,
you go shopping. So, and then the second thing's real places. It was interesting, people tended to choose things like parks that they really liked, or more off the beaten track places in London. Really interested. People chose some really interesting places that were being very carefully managed. And then ones that were on the edge, they identified a lot of the markets. And that was interesting because until recently, markets have been very favourite places for anybody to go on a Saturday. But I think
that has been more of a local, you know, in the UK.
It always has, hasn't it? It's always been more of a local thing. But I think that tourists have got used to the idea that actually if they go to markets, they're really interesting places to visit in foreign countries. And so the more tourists you have in markets, the more this is beginning to change the nature of markets. They're tending to have stalls that are catering to a tourist rather than to a Londoner. So that's put a lot of tension into those areas in London. So what I was saying to people about this was that you need to, if you're going to have a lot of tourists, and all of those people, let's face it, all of those tourists that are coming are going to go to Reykjavik, every single one of them. They're all going to come into Keflavik, they're all going to drive through Reykjavik. So they are all going to come here. So you're going to have 1.5 million people a year. And what I was saying is, those people that are coming, you need to realise that they're looking for an authentic experience. People that come to Iceland want an authentic experience. They don't want a tourist environment. So don't make one for them. Don't make it. So and
make it as local as possible.
Make it as local as possible.
That's a new tourist. Right?
And if I'm travelling, I want to see what local people are doing. I don't want an environment for me. I want to see what their environment's like because you're different than me, and I'm interested in that difference. That's interesting to me. That's what makes travel interesting. So you've got to keep that difference, and that's just about authenticity, and I think that's really important. And the thing I pointed out is in London at the South Bank, they've been doing a big project there, refurbishing the theatres and all this, and it's all been going fine until they've reached one spot where skateboarders have used for 40 years. And suddenly there's a big problem. And the problem here is that they're trying to turn this into a visitor environment, but there are real people who live in London that are using that space. And this has caused a big problem, and they're offering to move them, and they're saying you can't move history, we've always been here. It's one of the most important places to skateboard, not just in London but in Europe. People come from all over Europe to skateboard in this place. They say we are culture. You know, they keep saying, oh well, we want to put culture here. They're saying, well, we are culture. We are real culture, living culture. We are a part of the culture. And so the point I was making in this is that this becomes what lots of people call a site of contention, you know, where people are trying to resolve against each other. And you've just had exactly the same in Reykjavik, haven't you? The Ingus Golf Ball, where you've had the same problem, where the people that are using the square, suddenly they put grass down or something, didn't they? And they put some seats out in the square, and the skateboarders were annoyed about this, and they've thrown the seats all over. And what I was pointing out is that this is happening in London. This is what happens when you don't manage.
You have to control and manage.
You don't manage the interface between what visitors and guests are doing and what these people are doing. So my point that I was making in the end is I think that there's a fantastic opportunity in Reykjavik to do this, because the people that are coming, they're not the kinds of people that are looking for tourist environments. They're really not. And so Reykjavik should be kept as real as it can. And I gave two examples. One being Harper, which people from outside of Iceland think is amazing. It's an amazing building. It's a fantastic achievement. It's been an incredibly brave thing to do. On the back of it's a great idea. On the back of the financial crisis, to make something such a symbol, you know, and for everybody to see that and think this is amazing, and to bring in culture from abroad. And what's interesting is that if it brings conferences, it's bringing visitors. If visitors are here, they're going to see real culture, not something put on for them. It's real culture that's happening in that building. And so that becomes, that's real.
A good mix,
that's a real, either conferences where cultures are talking to each other with ideas, or creative culture where people are sharing something. It's not about visitors coming and taking. It's about things working together. And the other great example, I think, is airwaves. What's very clever about airwaves is it uses all the spaces the city already has. And it uses them really well, and it showcases Icelandic culture in the most amazing way possible. I've been to airwaves. I thought it was incredible, absolutely incredible. The quality of the music from a nation that has so few people in was outstanding. And then there are bands coming from abroad, so Icelandic people are seeing acts from abroad. The visitors that are coming are enjoying this whole thing going on, and then they're going off and doing other things in Iceland. So they are visitors, guest tourists. And what I've also been suggesting is that what you really need then is to apply that to everything. If you've got to build hotels, don't build them all together. Put one in a neighbourhood where it's putting a bar in that local people can use. If you're building a visitors centre, make sure it's all tied in with the national curriculum and that the education department have had a hand in it, so that school trips are going there.
Link it to each other.
Link it to everything. And so my final point really in all of this was just about whatever you build, whatever happens about the tourist industry now, everything must benefit Icelanders. Because it's your country, it's where you live.
Well, otherwise we don't like it and we don't go to the centre.
You don't go to the centre, you're not there, it's not a real place, and the visitors come, and that's not what they want. And so I think it's really, really important for planning purposes now that the city planning, who would normally be planning for the citizens, education, homes, you know, employment, they need to be working very closely with the tourism planners to make sure that every tourism project is also a city planning project, and that everything is joined up. And when visitors are coming, they're just experiencing real Reykjavik, real Iceland, real experiences.
Our culture.
Your culture, because that is what they're coming from. And I think that if that disappears, the tourists will disappear as well.
Then we will be like Las Vegas.
You will be like Las Vegas. Yeah. So I think, you know, that's the message out there. And I gave at the end, I said, because you're Icelanders, I can only summarise this with a fish metaphor. So I said, you know, there are fish out there. I gave the example of the wrasse. It's a cleaner fish. It works with the big fish. It works alongside it, it cleans the fish, and the big fish doesn't eat it because it's doing a job. And that's the relationship that we need to have between city planning and tourism planning, between visitors and between real culture. They need to work together in a symbiosis. And what you don't want is for tourism projects to be parasitic projects. They're things that come in and only take. They don't give back. And I think that's really important. And this is a fantastic moment. It's a great opportunity, but it needs to be managed really well. And this isn't a gold rush. You know, people will come, and you just need to take time to plan properly for it. Make sure it benefits every Icelander.
Eric, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Enjoy your stay in Iceland.
I'm sure I will.
And we hope to see you again.
Yeah, you certainly will.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.